What happens when one of Hollywood's most intense actors gets ambushed by a host who thinks he can break him down on live television? Today we're diving into the explosive moment when Tom Hardy absolutely lost it during what was supposed to be a routine morning show appearance on Today with Craig Melvin. This wasn't your typical celebrity interview gone wrong. This was a masterclass in how not to interview someone, and Hardy made sure everyone knew it. Before we get into this incredible breakdown, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below because you're going to want to discuss this one. Trust me, what you're about to see will have you questioning everything you thought you knew about live television. It started innocently enough. Tom Hardy walked onto the Today Show set that morning wearing his signature leather jacket, looking every bit the brooding actor we all know and love. Craig Melvin greeted him with that practiced television smile, the kind that doesn't quite reach the eyes, and Hardy could sense something was off from the moment he sat down. "Tom Hardy, welcome to Today," Melvin began, his voice carrying that artificially cheerful tone that morning show host perfect over years of practice. "Great to have you here." "Thanks for having me," Hardy replied, settling into his chair with the casual confidence of someone who's done 1,000 of these interviews. His voice carried that distinctive, gruff quality that made him perfect for roles like Bane and Venom. But Melvin wasn't interested in the usual promotional small talk. He had an agenda, and it became clear within seconds that this wasn't going to be the standard celebrity puff piece that Hardy was expecting. "So Tom, let's talk about your latest project," Melvin said, leaning forward slightly with the predatory instinct of a journalist who thinks he's about to land a big story. "But first, I want to address something that's been circulating online. There are some pretty serious allegations about your behavior on set." Hardy's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Anyone who knew his work could recognize that look, the same intensity he brought to his most challenging roles. But this time, it was real, and it was directed at the man sitting across from him. "What allegations would those be, Craig?" Hardy asked, his voice remaining calm, but with an edge that suggested Melvin was treading on dangerous ground. "Well, there are reports from unnamed sources suggesting that you've been difficult to work with, that you've had several heated confrontations with directors and fellow actors. Some are even calling you unprofessional." The studio audience, which had been buzzing with the usual morning show energy, fell silent. This wasn't the lighthearted banter they'd come to see. Even the camera operators seemed to sense the shift in atmosphere. Hardy stared at Melvin for a long moment, his jaw working slightly as he processed what had just happened. "Unnamed sources," he repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. "That's interesting, Craig. So you're telling me that you brought me here under the pretense of promoting my work, but really, you want to ambush me with gossip?" "I wouldn't call it gossip, Tom. These are legitimate concerns raised by people in the industry." "People in the industry," Hardy echoed, his voice getting quieter, which anyone familiar with his performances knew was not a good sign. "What people, Craig? Can you name them?" Melvin shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly not expecting Hardy to push back so directly. "Well, as I mentioned, they're unnamed sources, so I can't." "So you can't," Hardy interrupted, his British accent becoming more pronounced as his irritation grew. "You can't name them because they don't exist, or you can't name them because you promised them anonymity while they spread lies about me?" The tension in the studio was palpable now. Melvin tried to regain control of the interview, but Hardy was just getting started. "You know what I find interesting, Craig?" Hardy continued, not waiting for an answer. "I've been acting for over 2 decades. I've worked with some of the most respected directors and actors in the business: Christopher Nolan, Ridley Scott, Leonardo DiCaprio, Christian Bale. Funny how none of them seem to have any problems working with me." "Well, that may be true, but nothing." Hardy cut him off again, his voice rising slightly. "You invited me here to talk about my work, about the craft I've dedicated my life to, and instead you want to play tabloid journalist with secondhand rumors?" Melvin was clearly flustered now, his practiced composure beginning to crack under Hardy's relentless pushback. "Tom, I think you're overreacting. This is just standard journalism, asking the tough questions." Hardy let out a short, bitter laugh. "Standard journalism? Is that what you call it when you can't be bothered to verify your sources or provide any actual evidence for your accusations?" The camera caught every micro-expression on both men's faces. Hardy's controlled anger was mesmerizing to watch, like seeing a master craftsman at work, except this time the craft was dismantling a television host's credibility in real time. Look, Tom, I understand you're upset, but viewers deserve to know. Viewers deserve to know what? Hardy interrupted once more, leaning forward in his chair. They deserve to know that you're willing to spread unsubstantiated rumors about your guests? They deserve to know that you think it's acceptable to waste everyone's time with this kind of tabloid nonsense? Melvin tried a different approach, his voice taking on a condescending tone that only made things worse. Tom, I think maybe you need to calm down a bit. This is live television after all. That was the moment everything changed. Hardy's eyes flashed with something dangerous, and everyone in the studio could feel the shift. The controlled anger was about to become something much more explosive. The words "calm down" hung in the air like a lit fuse waiting to explode. Hardy's entire demeanor shifted in that instant, and anyone who had ever seen him transform into characters like Bronson or Alfie Solomons knew they were about to witness something extraordinary. Except this time it wasn't acting. "Calm down?" Hardy repeated, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, which made it infinitely more menacing than if he had shouted. "Did you just tell me to calm down on your show after you ambushed me with lies?" Melvin realized his mistake immediately, but it was far too late to take it back. His face went pale as he watched Hardy slowly rise from his chair. Not in an aggressive way, but with the deliberate movement of someone who had reached the absolute limit of their patience. "You know what, Craig?" Hardy said, standing now and looking down at the seated host. "Let me tell you something about professionalism, since you seem so concerned about it. Professional journalists do their research. They verify their sources. They don't invite guests onto their show under false pretenses. Tom, please, let's just sit down and—" "No," Hardy said firmly, cutting him off with a gesture. "I'm not sitting down. I'm not playing your game anymore. You want to talk about being difficult to work with? Let me show you what difficult really looks like." The studio audience was completely silent now, some people holding their breath, others pulling out their phones to record what was clearly becoming television history. The cameramen kept rolling, knowing they were capturing something that would be talked about for years. Hardy began pacing slightly, his movements controlled but charged with energy. "You see, Craig, when someone like Christopher Nolan calls me difficult, I'll listen. When someone like Ridley Scott has concerns about my professionalism, I'll take it seriously. But when some morning show host who probably couldn't direct traffic, let alone a film, wants to lecture me about my career based on anonymous gossip, that's where I draw the line." Melvin tried to interject. "Tom, I never said I was lecturing you." "Didn't you?" Hardy whirled around to face him directly. "Because from where I'm standing, it sure sounded like you were trying to dress me down on live television. Tell me, Craig, how many films have you made? How many characters have you brought to life? How many times have you transformed your entire physical being for a role?" The questions came rapid fire, and Melvin couldn't answer any of them because they both knew the answer was zero. "That's what I thought," Hardy continued. "So maybe, just maybe, you should stick to asking about the weather and leave the real journalism to people who actually know how to do it." By this point, Melvin was visibly sweating, his carefully styled hair beginning to show signs of stress. "Tom, I think there's been a misunderstanding here." "A misunderstanding?" Hardy laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The only misunderstanding here is that you thought you could bring me on your show and try to make a name for yourself by tearing me down. Did you really think I was going to sit here and let you assassinate my character with secondhand rumors? I was just doing my job." "Your job?" Hardy's voice rose slightly for the first time. "Your job is to entertain people in the morning, maybe give them some celebrity news, talk about movies and books and feel-good stories. Your job is not to be some wannabe investigative journalist throwing around unsubstantiated accusations." The camera operators were getting everything, every facial expression, every gesture, every moment of this complete destruction of a morning show host's credibility. This wasn't just an interview gone wrong. This was a masterclass in how to handle media manipulation. "You know what the really sad part is, Craig?" Hardy continued, his voice returning to that dangerously quiet tone. "I actually came here today, excited to talk about my work. I was looking forward to discussing the craft, the preparation, the collaboration with other artists. Instead, you turned it into some kind of hit piece based on nothing but gossip." Melvin made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "Tom, perhaps we can start over. Let's talk about your latest project." "Start over?" Hardy stared at him incredulously. You think after what you just did, after you tried to ambush me with lies and then told me to calm down when I called you out on it, you think we can just start over like nothing happened? The silence stretched between them, and everyone in the studio could feel the weight of it. Hardy stood there, every inch the formidable presence that had made him one of the most respected actors of his generation, while Melvin sat in his chair looking like a man who had just realized he had bitten off far more than he could chew. "Here's what's going to happen, Craig," Hardy said finally, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had completely taken control of the situation. "I'm going to walk off this set, and you're going to sit there and think about what real professionalism looks like. And maybe, just maybe, the next time you have a guest on your show, you'll remember to treat them with the basic respect that any human being deserves." Hardy started to turn away from the desk, but then stopped and looked back at Melvin one more time. "Oh, and Craig?" he said, his voice carrying that same intensity that had made Bane such a memorable villain. "Next time you want to play journalist, maybe try learning how to be one first." The words hit Melvin like a physical blow, and for a moment it looked like he might actually try to respond. But Hardy wasn't finished. In fact, what came next would go down as one of the most brutal verbal takedowns in live television history. "Actually, you know what, Craig?" Hardy said, turning back to face him fully. "I changed my mind. I'm not walking away just yet, because I think the people watching deserve to understand exactly what just happened here." Hardy moved closer to Melvin's desk, not in a threatening way, but with the confidence of someone who had already won the battle and was now explaining the victory to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," Hardy said, addressing the camera directly, "what you just witnessed is what happens when someone in the media thinks they can build their career by tearing down others. Craig here thought he could make a name for himself by trying to humiliate me with unverified gossip." Melvin tried to speak. "Tom, that's not what—" "I'm talking," Hardy said without even looking at him, his focus remaining on the camera. "See, this is the problem with modern media. They don't want to do the hard work of actual journalism. They'd rather trade in rumors and speculation because it's easier and it gets more attention." The control room was probably in chaos at this point, but the cameras kept rolling because everyone knew they were witnessing something unprecedented. Hardy had completely hijacked the show, but he was doing it with such articulate precision that it was impossible to look away. "Craig invited me here under the pretense of discussing my work," Hardy continued, "but what he really wanted was to see if he could rattle me, if he could get me to have some kind of breakdown that would make for good television. Well, congratulations, Craig, you got your dramatic television moment. Unfortunately for you, it didn't go quite the way you planned." Now Hardy did turn to look at Melvin, who was sitting there like a deer caught in headlights. "Tell me, Craig, do you feel good about what you just did? Do you feel proud of the way you conducted yourself as a journalist?" Melvin's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. He was completely out of his depth, facing an opponent who was not only more intelligent and articulate than he had anticipated, but who had also completely flipped the script on him. "I'll take your silence as a no," Hardy said, "because deep down you know that what you did was wrong. You know that ambushing a guest with unsubstantiated accusations is not journalism, it's character assassination." Hardy began walking around the desk now, not aggressively, but like a professor giving a lecture to a particularly slow student. "You see, Craig, the difference between you and me is that when I do my job, I prepare. I research my characters. I understand their motivations. I work with my fellow actors and directors to create something meaningful. When you do your job, apparently, you just throw mud at the wall and see what sticks." The audience was completely mesmerized. Some were filming with their phones. Others were just staring in amazement at this complete dismantling of a television host by his own guest. "But here's the thing that really bothers me, Craig," Hardy said, his voice taking on an even more serious tone. "It's not just about me. How many other guests have you done this to? How many other people have you tried to ambush with rumors and gossip? How many careers have you tried to damage for the sake of ratings?" Melvin finally found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a croak. "Tom, I think you're being unfair." "Unfair?" Hardy's eyebrows shot up. "I'm being unfair? Craig, you invited me here. You lied about your intentions. You attacked my professional reputation with unverified claims. And then you told me to calm down when I defended myself. And I'm the one being unfair?" The silence that followed was deafening. Hardy stood there, looking down at Melvin with the kind of expression that would have been terrifying if directed at you personally. "You know what, Craig?" Hardy said finally. "I actually feel sorry for you. Because this moment, this interview, it's going to follow you for the rest of your career. People are going to remember the time you tried to take down Tom Hardy and ended up destroying your own credibility instead." Hardy straightened his jacket and looked directly into the camera one final time. To anyone watching this who works in media, let this be a lesson. Treat your guests with respect, do your research, verify your sources, and maybe, just maybe, remember that the people you interview are human beings who deserve basic decency. He turned back to Melvin one last time. "As for you, Craig, I hope you learned something today, though somehow I doubt it." With that, Hardy walked off the set, leaving Melvin sitting alone at his desk, looking like a man who had just experienced a natural disaster. The cameras kept rolling for several more seconds, capturing Melvin's stunned expression as he tried to process what had just happened to him. The studio audience sat in stunned silence, unsure whether to applaud or simply stare in amazement at what they had just witnessed. One thing was certain, though. This was not the interview anyone had expected, and it was definitely not the outcome Craig Melvin had hoped for when he decided to ambush one of Hollywood's most intense actors. What you just witnessed was a masterclass in how to handle media manipulation and defend yourself against character assassination. Tom Hardy didn't just walk away from that interview. He completely destroyed Craig Melvin's credibility and showed everyone watching exactly what real professionalism looks like. Make sure you subscribe for more incredible moments like this and drop a comment below. What do you think Craig Melvin was really trying to accomplish with that ambush interview?